November 5th, 2022. This is an emergency Saturday transmission on our shows.
InfoWars. Tomorrow's news today.
Coming up, he's about to be in studio with us. We're going to do an in-depth 2-hour interview, commercial-free, with Dr. Peter McCullough, completely vindicated, predicting the lab origins of the deadly virus and the even more deadly shot. Uncensored, unfiltered, what the enemy fears above all else is real information. It's coming up in mere minutes on this special Saturday transmission. Whether you're watching this at Infowars.com streams, whether you're listening to it on the radio stations, go to band.video and take this archive once the show is streamed out and share it. Band.video. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, so much to talk about, so many big developments. You know, I said earlier in the week, I'm going to be coming here on Saturday. I get so many Elon Musk questions. I get so many Kanye, Ye West questions. Are they good? Are they bad? I said I'll spend some time on that. But there are bigger fish to fry. I just know this. Power structures coming after Kanye West. Yeah. They're coming after Elon Musk. I'm not saying Elon Musk is a great guy. I just know the ADL, George Soros, they're boycotting, they're censoring, they're attacking. Twitter had to fire 50% of its employees. We didn't get news like this. That Ye, in a conversation last night, told me, and no one broke this but Infowars.com, that he has been suspended for 7 days on Twitter. And the question is, did Elon Musk do this? No, Elon Musk is not even in control of the company yet. Now, down the road, if he doesn't restore him, you know, there's some shit going on, and that's wrong. But that's the big exclusive news on that front. But we've got the midterms now in just 3 days. The polls open in 64 hours. And we know there's the biggest red wave in history, a total political realignment. But just like we just saw in Brazil, they are going to try to steal it like Lula has done with Bolsonaro. But Bolsonaro is not backing down. That country is in full revolution. So this is do or die time. I'll obviously be back tomorrow night, 4 to 6 p.m. myself on Schroyer, 6 to 8 p.m. on Sunday Live. I'm back weekday mornings. Dr. Harrison Smith of American Journal at 8 a.m. We're live at 11 a.m. And Tuesday, we're going to have live coverage right through to the wee hours of this historic election, which in key battleground states, Fetterman and Obama 2.0, Biden, have all told us are going to be held up because they got to have time to get all those special ballots they got ready stuffed into the situation. So that's all coming up today and tonight on the special emergency broadcast. But I wanted to talk about the big picture of the COVID tyranny. You know, the globalists are begging for mercy and saying they want a COVID amnesty while they still try to inject their children with poison shots. They know we're a massive group of people worldwide, including a lot of top scientists and doctors that know what's really happening. And they know they're beginning to lose. So now they want to claim they're not going to attack us with bioweapons anymore. But you know that's not the case. They're going to come back with them over and over and over again. And so now more than ever, we cannot give amnesty to these monsters. We'll be talking about it with Dr. Peter McCullough coming up. But I wanted to play a clip 2 from Russell Brand, who I've known for 15 years. He's been on the show many times. I've met with him before here in Austin. For some reason, I'm out of contact with him for 5 years. Can't get on his show. Can't get him on, even though he said nice things about me on Joe Rogan. But he did a great analysis of the new so-called UK Prime Minister and the mega digital bank cashless society they're pushing. Here's a clip of Russell Brand.
Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote.
I like it. That's quite a broad concept. What if this person's an idiot? Which we think that they are. It's like a digital penny, your digital money. box for your digital shithole that you live in. You will owe nothing. You will be happy.
That can be used alongside physical notes and coins.
For now, till we phase them out, if you start any little trucker protests, oh, where's my money gone? The digital piggy bank is broken, I'm afraid. Start being a bit more cooperative.
Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK.
That's good, a central bank. Nothing wrong with centralised authority, centralised power, globalist decrees coming down from on high, avoiding democracy. That's exactly what we want to be talking.
And governments and central banks across the world are working together.
Oh, really? They're working together? Oh, that's just such great news. The IMF, the World Bank. Why don't we involve the WEF and the WHO? What we need are unelected global bodies that have been able to co-opt political power, respond to financial power, and ignore and oppress ordinary people. Whether it's the recent medical emergency or the cost of living crisis, we're seeing the benefits all around us. I can't wait for your next policy. You're going to take our money now. This is great.
Looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice.
I think I know what it means in practice. More power for you, no power for us.
This includes issues that people care about, such as ensuring users' money would be safe and secure, that it could work with other ways to pay, would be energy efficient.
Oh, it's got to be energy efficient. I was about to say, is it energy efficient? Is it energy efficient? I've got to make sure. Oh, a few other questions. You wouldn't use this ever, would you, to implement control or to advance social credit type systems or to shut down the bank accounts of people you disagree with or to surveil people and have a surveillance network that you've developed in conjunction with big tech and now a financial arm that you're developing so that you can lock steps together and gridlock us in a digital prison of surveillance tyranny? That's just on the top of my head.
Of course, the new Prime Minister says IMF World Bank, but no. Russell Brand says, oh, are we going to have WEF involved? No, WEF and Bill Gates have given the money to it to create the new digital world ID. It's not coming, it's here. Here's a very powerful report just premiered at Band.video, Bolsonaro election fraud and the big red wave from Greg Reese.
Before his first election, the radical opposition attempted to assassinate Jair Bolsonaro.
Jair Bolsonaro has been left in a serious but stable condition in hospital. This after being stabbed while drumming up support ahead of next month's vote. Hospital officials say it could take 2 months for him to recover.
They failed, and President Bolsonaro went on to become today's leading model of what a world leader should be, a man of the people. He spoke out against the COVID pandemic hoax from the very beginning.
Brazil's right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro said he will not take a coronavirus vaccine, calling it his, quote, right. He made statements live on social media Thursday, adding that Congress was not likely to require Brazilians to take a vaccine.
He thanked the farmers of Brazil for not shutting down.
Vocês não ficaram em casa. Não se acovardaram. Nós temos que enfrentar os nossos problemas. Chega de frescura e de mimimi.
And declared every single Brazilian as being essential.
Essa atividade é essencial, aquela não. A atividade essencial é toda aquela necessária para o chefe de família levar o pão para dentro de casa. Porra!
And now the world is realizing that Bolsonaro was right. No matter how much the media tries to smear him, the people of Brazil love him.
Nós queremos eleições limpas, auditáveis e com contagem pública do governo. Não posso participar de uma farsa como essa patrocinada ainda pelo presidente do Tribunal Superior Eleitoral.
The awakening masses in Brazil, like everywhere else in the world today, were expecting election fraud.
Polls show Bolsonaro still trailing behind left-wing former leader Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Polls are lying. If Lula is really the frontrunner, where is he? Where are his crowds? We are here to show that Bolsonaro represents the majority. He will only lose the election if there is fraud, and the people will take to the streets to stop that from happening.
And they have taken to the streets. All over Brazil, the people are not willing to go the way of Joe Obama. the way of the World Economic Forum? What will it take for the people to be represented? And what will America do if the anticipated red wave is stolen?
The president's office may have conceded defeat, but many of Jair Bolsonaro's millions of supporters have not. They took to the streets of Sao Paulo in their thousands. The national flag waved above the crowds as they gathered outside the headquarters of the military's Southeastern Command. They're calling for an intervention. Put simply, they want a military coup. They despise the leftist policies of Lula da Silva, and they want him out by any means.
I think the red wave that's coming is going to be like the elevator doors opening up in The Shining.
Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
We are now only 63 hours out from the midterms. We'll be here covering it all live. Ladies and gentlemen, globalists are a complete satanic joke. All right. We're going to go to break. We're going to come back. Dr. Peter McCullough is ready to get in here and be in studio for 2 hours. They do not want you to hear this. This man is vindicated. They're trying to strip his medical licenses. He's going to expose the crimes against humanity, and he told me the gloves are off. He's going to tell you everything he knows. So that's coming up here in just a moment. Please don't forget, we've launched the biggest sale of the year. Things build in October and in November. They always peak in November with our Black Friday comes early. And then you'll have all these sales through December, but a lot of stuff will sell out. So the products are basically all in. Most of them are still there. X3 is about to sell out. And you'll be able to get up to 60% off the promo code 1776 until the stuff sells out. We need the war chest to fund ourselves. Plus, these are amazing products you need. X3, Vitamin Mineral Fusion, DNA Force Plus, Brain Force Ultra, Brain Force Plus, the double fizzy magnesium product, all of it at InfoWarsStore.com. I want to thank you for your past support. This is the fight. We're in the fight, and we wouldn't be here without you. Plus, these are great products you need. InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. So we're going to go to Dr. Peter McCullough. Then I'm going to come back with an Alan Watt interview. A listener pointed this out on Friday. Did this interview 12 years ago, did a group of interviews for a film that never got made. He died a few years ago. But talk about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and the whole New World Order. This guy was as smart as myself or David Icke or anybody, or maybe smarter. So the full 2+ hour interview is on Band.video right now. We had it reposted on this Saturday. Alan Watt, think outside your programming, but 30-minute excerpt of that is coming up at the end today. So please stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm pointing my finger at you. And I'm also pointing right back at myself. You forget to take your multivitamins. You forget to take your vitamin D3. You forget to take your Brain Force Plus. You forget to take DNA Force Plus. You forget to take the X3, and you know it makes your life better, and you know it makes you healthier, and you constantly forget, and when you remember to do it, you're a lot healthier. This stuff will blow you away, plus it funds our operation. We got the biggest sale of the year going right now at InfoWarsStore.com with promo code 1776. Go to InfoWarsStore.com and use promo code 1776 to get up to 60% off on these best-selling products. The lowest deal is 40%. Most of the sales are 60 or 50% when you use promo code 1776. There's too many products to tell you about them all. They're all kick-ass. They keep us on the air. Please continue to support, and I love you, and I thank you. 1776 at InfoWarsStore.com.
InfoWars. Tomorrow's news today.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. A tale of two cities. Dr. Peter McCullough is totally, absolutely vindicated in his work of the last 2.5+ years, questioning where the virus came from and then pointing out the dangers of the so-called experimental vaccines, because he's been probably, arguably, the most effective, accurate truthful person all over Fox News, all over international media, all over talk radio, topping the charts on some of the biggest podcasts in history with Joe Rogan. He is being targeted to have his medical credentials stripped. They even had to change the rules to try to do this. This is outrageous. At the same time, we have the deep state through their mouthpiece, The Atlantic, coming out on Monday saying, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. And saying, we made mistakes, we're sorry, we're wrong. Well, basically, they lied at every front. In fact, there was an article came out on Friday that the DHS already had a whole plan for a pandemic and lockdowns and the entire operation years before Trump even got into office, and it was developed by Johns Hopkins, by Bill and Melinda Gates, and by the UN. So this is all a strategic operation. They're preparing to try to roll it out again. We also had the big news break last week in The Intercept that under Obama and then under Trump, but it was kept from him, and then under Biden, DHS coordinating with Democrat Party think tanks and private groups with government orders, illegally telling big tech what to censor. And paramount was people like Dr. Peter McCullough and others. Not just election fraud, not just open borders, but lockdowns and forced injections and the Afghan withdrawal. So this is the government directly colluding with big tech and private think tanks to censor the American people. And Dr. Peter McCullough is taking the gloves off now. He knows exactly what he's being targeted with. He's going to roll through it all with us in this extended commercial-free transmission with him in studio with us. Doctor, thank you so much for being here.
Alex, thanks for having me. The gloves are off. And I can tell you, America should be outraged with the developments we've seen over the last few weeks, certainly over the last few months. It's a mind-blowing reality that the U.S. government, multiple agencies working internationally with global agencies, are conducting operations against their own people. It's astonishing. And we have a situation now where it's all in the open. Authors have captured this. Peter Breggin, COVID-19, the Global Predators, he had captured this. Scott Atlas in his book about the White House captured part of it. Pam Popper, a whole variety, John Leake and myself, encouraged to face COVID-19. There is a biopharmaceutical complex, which is a complex syndicate that is working together in order to conduct an operation worldwide on people. And what's central to it, Alex, is mass vaccination.
We talked a lot before we began taping the special Saturday broadcast, so just please repeat what you were telling me and start at the beginning and walk through wherever you'd like to begin. The attack on you, the so-called a request to declare an amnesty, and what they're planning next.
Dr. Emily Oster from Brown University in The Atlantic put out an essay, and the title of it is Let's Declare a Pandemic. Not let's consider, let's declare it. So let's get the words right here. When there is wrongdoing by those in positions of authority, that's called malfeasance. And the wrongdoing that we can point clear examples that have occurred, obvious examples, irrefutable examples, led to lockdowns, loss of business, people losing their jobs, careers being ended, isolation, schools being disrupted, educational development of children permanently impaired, hospitalization and death that was avoidable. These are collectively crimes against humanity. And when there is such massive wrongdoing, the steps would be actually repenting, having regret for what's being done, some admission for what's being done, and then seeking forgiveness, and then ultimately amnesty. Because the crimes are so great and the injuries are so vast, there must be investigation, there must be justice that is served, and then at the very end of the day, considerations for amnesty. We had some great monologues this week on this. One is by Laura Ingraham on the Ingraham Angle, Fox News.
And so let's go ahead and play a few minutes of that 18-minute report. You can find it on Rumble on Dr. Peter McCullough's account if you want to watch the whole thing. Here's a few minutes of what she said about this so-called amnesty.
no amnesty. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, how convenient. Now that we see just how wrong the COVID experts were on everything from school shutdowns to vax mandates, those same experts are telling us that it's just time to move on.
Move on! Nothing to see here! Please disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
Writing in The Atlantic, Brown University economist Emily Oster argues that we need to let bygones be bygones on the COVID debate and not relitigate the past. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty, forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge. LA County closed its beaches in the summer of 2020. Now, ex post facto, this makes no sense, but we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. Nice try, but no way. First off, there is little sign that those responsible for the disastrous decisions actually learned much, if anything at all. Where were the mea culpas from the shutdown fanatics like Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx? First, they gave horrendous advice to Donald Trump that led to his decision to shut down the entire country. This never should have happened. It did enormous damage to our children, our economy, our constitutional rights, and the American psyche that we're still seeing play out today. Almost everything they advocated, other than maybe washing your hands and covering your face when you sneeze, was wrong. Like this.
If you're never within 6 feet of any single individual, then you've controlled the virus.
We're asking the young people to help us with this mitigation strategy by staying out of the bars, staying out of the restaurants, really trying to distance yourself. Don't get the attitude, well, I'm young, I'm invulnerable.
Do you realize that social distancing was never grounded in science? Never. It was all made up.
Single costliest recommendation that CDC made, that you had to maintain 6 feet of distance, that wasn't based on good judgment and good science.
They were wrong about the vaccine stopping transmission, too.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
Whoops, false. Most Americans thought the vaccine would stop you from getting COVID altogether. Well, of course, we know that was wrong. You also could transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. The CDC Director Walensky has been vaxxed and boosted, I think, a total of, 5 times? And she has COVID again. They were wrong to dismiss natural immunity as well. It turns out acquired immunity through previous infection does, in fact, provide durable immunity from future infection, and it certainly lessens your symptoms if you get it again. And do you remember what CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta and the rest of the medical cartel had Americans doing?
But we do know the virus can live on surfaces, for example, steel and plastic for up to 3 days. I've used a little glitter here for my kids to show you what the virus might be like. I'm just going to clean all the virus off here. Don't need to do too much. It's a pretty sensitive virus. You don't need to use any kind of specific wipe either. Any household cleaner will do.
Okay, I forgot that one. A few weeks later, CNN had to explain that no, you don't actually need to wipe down your box of spaghetti or leave your Amazon packages in the garage. How embarrassing. But these people were drunk on their own power. Anthony Fauci even wanted to control your holiday plans.
If you get vaccinated and your family's vaccinated, you can feel good about enjoying a typical Thanksgiving, Christmas with your family and close friends.
You've got to be careful when you go into large public indoor spaces where there are a lot of people there, and that's the reason why you should be wearing a mask under those circumstances. I mean, obvious, the N95 is the best, but a regular surgical mask as well as a cloth mask is fine.
Wait a second. It's fine? Is he talking about those filthy masks hanging on everyone's rearview mirrors? The masks that they grabbed before they dashed into a store? Perhaps the worst part of all of this was the vicious campaign to smear and deplatform anyone who questioned their pronouncements, including world-renowned doctors and researchers. Remember the Great Barrington Declaration? From our top academic institutions, they even blacklisted people. These people have been threatened and excommunicated by medical associations and, of course, social media platforms. And despite how wrong the so-called experts were on a myriad issues, the retribution against dissident doctors continues to this day in the name of protecting public health and combating the spread of dangerous disinformation. How ironic, since they're the worst purveyors of it of all. Famed cardiologist and member of my medicine cabinet, Peter McCullough, could even lose his board certification for what he said over the last 2+ years. He told MedPage that he's appealing the recommendation by the American Board of Internal Medicine, and he's persecuted for stating the truth that the government was playing with math on the virus's true lethality. That was another issue of his. Well, now we see that he and others who spoke about the lethality of the virus were right. A new analysis of COVID deaths shows that early on, before vaccines were available, the infection fatality rate for people younger than the age of 70 was below 1%. And for those under the age of 19, it was 0.0003%. Now, given the analysis we just read, it's less lethal than the flu to a majority of the population. That is stunning. So-called public health officials duped America.
All right, Doc. So you wanted to play that. I'm glad we played that. And quite frankly, Laura Ingraham does a great job. It's a lot of courage. But the examples she used are nothing compared to sending people sick with COVID into nursing homes and putting them on ventilators, but then not letting families go see their loved ones, and just, you know, all the other lies that we were told. It's just staggering. Or if you have the shot, you can't spread COVID. I mean, it's just, but then everything you said has been proven right, so that's why you're being targeted. So it's like they gave Obama, who launched all these wars, a peace prize. So it turns the Nobel Peace Prize into a joke. So instead of getting a peace prize now, when these guys come after you, that's like winning the Oscar, because that shows that you're the good guy. I mean, this is a joke. I mean, I know it's hard to have them saying you're bad, coming after you, trying to take your license, but they want amnesty for all their lies and corruption and debt they've caused, but then they're still trying to target people that force the truth out. You won, we won. People now know. Almost no one's taking these dangerous shots, and so now they want to retroactively come back and quietly punish doctors, so other doctors in the future, when they try it again, don't speak up.
Well, let's pick a couple examples, Alex, even before the vaccines. First one, remdesivir, the intravenous polymerase inhibitor. By November of 2020, the World Health Organization declares, do not use remdesivir in hospitalized COVID-19 patients because it doesn't reduce mortality and it causes complications like kidney damage and liver damage. This is an obvious example. So when our Department of Health and Human Services and Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services gives enhanced reimbursement to American hospitals to encourage the use of remdesivir when it shouldn't be used, is a clear example. The World Health Organization followed up with an analysis in May of 2022 in The Lancet and confirmed they were right back in November of 2020. Remdesivir should have never been used. That is a clear-cut example. I'll give you another one. October 4th, 2020, as Laura Ingraham points out, the Great Barrington Declaration is published by Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, Sunetra Gupta from Oxford. It's signed by nearly 1 million scientists and people in my circles, saying that we should only take special protective measures for our seniors and high-risk individuals. The rest of society go on normally. No lockdowns, no changes with schools, no changes.
And that's staggering. So 1 million doctors and scientists and healthcare providers go and do this. It's totally ignored. And then now they're trying to take your license for joining 1 million people with the truth.
In fact, not only was it ignored, but later on, NIAID Director Anthony Fauci directly attacks Jay Bhattacharya, who's a frequent contributor on Fox News, as I am, for crafting the Great Barrington Declaration. And you're right, now there's the hunting of doctors who have come out and tried to help their patients directly in their practices by treating patients and also bringing America the truth. What happened for me was the American Board of Internal Medicine, which its only role is to certify and accredit my residency and fellowship training. So I completed residency for 3 years in medicine, and 3 years cardiology fellowship. They are a standard by which they indicate that I've completed the criteria and that I have passed examinations for internal medicine. I've passed 4 life and career determining internal medicine examinations.
So how do they then punish you by going back decades to pull tests you passed? That's like saying we're going to pull your college degree.
No, listen, I met all the clinical criteria for internal medicine, 4 sets of exams through 4 decades now of practice, and cardiology, 3 sets of exams. So my clinical track record is perfect. The ABIM.
That's like taking somebody's driver's license when they have a perfect driving record.
Right. So anyhow, so I have the clinical, complete clinical dossier as a highly qualified doctor. It's untouchable. What the ABIM does, Alex, in September of 2021, they declare that they are going to have a COVID misinformation campaign that they announced. They never define what information or misinformation is. They don't offer any teaching modules.
And that's run by the secret DHS Disinformation Governance Board that it says specifically, Intercept this week, targets doctors that question the official narrative. Right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Almost certainly these government agencies directly started to work with the Federation of State Medical Boards, the various accrediting bodies like the American Board of Internal Medicine. But listen to this, Alex. And so in September, they declare this campaign without giving doctors any type of guidance of what they can do or can't do. Then for me, they go back in time, ex post facto, to March of 2021 in my Senate testimony in the Texas Senate, where under oath, I'm giving my best estimates of what is going on in the pandemic. I'm using standard CDC equations. I'm answering questions for the Committee on Health and Human Services. And they take statements that I've made in the Texas Senate and they declare them misinformation. They put a letter out to me in May of 2022 saying this, among other things, we have declared as misinformation. They give me a chance to respond. I generate a tremendous response document. As Americans have grown to know me, I cite every single piece of information. I do not freewheel or guess on anything. Everything is completely factual. I give this response letter back to the American Board of Internal Medicine. I just received a letter October 19th, 2022, stating, we don't think anything you said, Dr. McCullough, is compelling. So therefore, we've convicted you of misinformation, and we are recommending that your entire residency and fellowship are stripped. Your board certifications are stripped from you. Basically, essentially taking 6 years of my life away and leaving.
And by the way, California is trying to pass a law under Newsom that if their government board says something's disinfo, like vitamin D3 protects you a lot from viruses, you will be stripped as well. So it doesn't matter what your real medical training says. If you don't follow the corporate announcement as a doctor, we're going to strip you.
California AB 2098 has actually been signed into law by Gavin Newsom. It's not in effect yet until January of 2023. There, the California Medical Board, again, declaring misinformation and information, but without giving any guidance of what it is, no teaching modules, no guidance.
It's a magic wand.
Yeah.
It's just whatever we say, but again, you're being punished for being accurate. I know you don't want to do a victory lap, but look at your record of what you wrote and what you said as a well-known doctor, and also a guy that done a lot of clinical trials and run government research programs, where you were right. If anything, I think you underestimated how bad the experimental shots were. If you were wrong in any way, it was underestimating how bad it was.
Yeah, I held myself out as being a reasonable doctor in the exam room with patients. The same way I carry myself with patients in my practice is the way I carried myself before the public through 2 sets of extensive U.S. Senate testimony, 2 sets of Texas Senate testimony, multiple other states, innumerable high-level media interviews. And when I was wrong or learned new details about the pandemic, I quickly acknowledged it and updated the information database. I'll give you an example.
That's how science works. It's a process.
Yes, I'll give you an example. I went to Joe Rogan's studio in December of 2022, and this is before the Omicron outbreak, and I was convinced that 2021, right, thank you, that the natural immunity was holding out. And it was like 2 days later, the news broke that actually Omicron broke through the natural immunity. I went on national TV that night and I said, listen, this is an update. Watch out, you really can get COVID multiple times. Omicron broke through. And quickly, the Joe Rogan audience, were messaging me. They quickly said, okay, we understand Dr. McCullough is fair and reasonable. And that's how people have characterized me. But this relentless pursuit of me as a public figure now, who has basically, as a doctor and doctors in my circle, worked to save as many lives as possible, worked globally to bring truthful information forward on the pandemic. This is part of the overall government operation.
And we talked before we went on air about, you've done the deep dive, and so have we. It's on record. DARPA is pushing the mRNA. It's not a vaccine. They're using Pfizer and Moderna as front groups. Even Gates is a front group. I want to start getting into some of the mechanics of that and where you see all this going, because we can see them warming up for a new virus, a new push. And as you said, this is a military weapon being used against people.
To set the understanding here, so the National Institutes of Health has had a long-standing interest in biological threats to populations, and the division dealing with this is called BARDA. I've chaired Data Safety Monitoring Board in the past for BARDA on a program, so I'm very familiar with it. On the military side, the research organization is DARPA. And these two work in concert to identify and work on biological threats and work on answers. Like vaccines, monoclonal antibodies, drugs, other things that can be done, largely to protect the military, but there has been an interest in the public at large. Now, on the DARPA website is a program called the ADEPT P3 program.
The ADEPT?
P3, ADEPT P3 program on their website. And in that program, for many years now, they have described that DARPA is working with messenger RNA. And in one of their prospectuses, they actually, for the US government, they have a figure where they declare that they can use messenger RNA technology to end a pandemic within 60 days. And this was sold to American military, government leaders that messenger RNA was going to be the future approach for many years. So this was long before we heard about Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca. The messenger RNA was actually part of government interests from a military biological research perspective.
And I remember videos from 2017 with Fauci and others on C-SPAN. They were saying, we've got all this mRNA, it's going to cure everything, but we've got to blow up the old approval system that takes 5-10 years first, and maybe a virus out of China will allow us to do that.
Okay,
that's a chilling video.
You picked up an important point. So the key here was to have a global and national emergencies. And note that our current President Biden has extended this recently again, the never-ending emergency. As long as an emergency is declared, emergency use authorization and emergency countermeasures are enabled. This is very important. Under emergency use authorization, it's actually debatable whether or not FDA approval is even needed. In many ways, the FDA, in their pronouncements on the vaccines, are theater. This largely theater. CDC.
Well, that was the report I saw Friday, which, guys, I put in the conference room, and I forgot to get out of the big stack from Friday. I didn't cover it. But I remember the headline. It was like linked to the Daily Mail. The headline was, National Security Council had already developed secret plan implemented for COVID and was in full control under national emergency. The point is, we already know that. It's just what you're saying is this was all pre-programmed and ready.
It was pre-programmed and ready, and when the vaccines rolled out, the very initial document that was presented to the public was signed by Alex Azar, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Defense, HHS and DOD. So we really just need the Secretary of the Health and Human Services to sign off on this. This is a necessary measure, and then the military to go ahead and carry this out. On my podcast this weekend, playing today and tomorrow, I interviewed Sasha Ladipova, who is a vaccine and pharmaceutical expert. She's an investigative journalist now. And we do a deep dive into this, Alex. The vaccines are largely produced by military contractors. That Pfizer and Moderna and the other companies, they're basically shields. They're some type of like a figurehead, if you will, of what's going on. But importantly, the final fill and finish, that is pouring the vials of the vaccine. That's done by defense contractors. Under EUA, Alex, there's no inspection for safety, purity, or for quality.
And now they're targeting 6-month-olds and up. Only country in the world doing it. Give us 35,000-foot view. Then I want to get back into this amnesty. We have another clip from Del Bigtree that's very important to get to. You don't speculate. You've just stuck to the facts. But privately, we've talked about this going back a year ago, and now, before we went on air today. I mean, big picture, this is very cold-blooded. They know these shots are hurting people. They're trying to cover it up, and they're still trying to make our troops take it. Obviously, the average person in the military is a great person, but when we talk about defense contractors, this is just the biggest budget we have, and it's a lot of special interests that are in control of the Defense Department that are doing this. Obviously, they know what they're doing, hitting us with what I would call as a weapon, and then after we get back into them wanting amnesty, you got to play that clip. I want to talk about the motives for rolling something out that hurts and kills as many people. How do they think they're getting away with it?
How could governments conduct operations against their own people worldwide? And you can see this fraction of response country by country. Americans know something is wrong. Let me give you some important data points. The Zogby survey company, reliable survey company, did a survey of Americans, found that 2/3 have taken a COVID vaccine. Of those, 15% have some new medical problem that they're seeing a doctor for. 85% are fine. Sashi Latapova on my podcast this weekend, McCullough Report, indicates that those who are fine probably have gotten relatively inert shots of degraded messenger RNA or low concentration messenger RNA. Those who are injured are getting what's called hot lots. We know that 35% of the deaths with, 80% of the deaths with Pfizer and 35% of the lots, 80% of the deaths with Moderna are within 20% of the lots. And Americans know from that perspective that people are talking to other people. A survey from Michigan State, Ditmore and colleagues, 22% of Americans know somebody who's been injured or died after a vaccine. So we don't need social media, Alex. We don't need major media to broadcast this message. People are talking to one another. If the camera will get on my screen right now, I am on the CDC website, the COVID data tracker, and notice on the right corner here, vaccinations. This is the percent of individuals over age 5 with an updated booster dose. Answer, 8.4%. These boosters, the bivalent boosters, which are still 50% of the original legacy vaccine, which is obsolete, and 50% of the Omicron BA4, BA5 subvariant, the homologous epitope of those, that vaccine had no human data. There were no clinical trials. It was tested in a small number of mice. It failed in stopping the infection, and there was a false rise in the antibodies, a false surrogate, if you will. And so importantly, that is, I think, prima facie evidence that the FDA actually doesn't need to approve these. They don't need to apply any standards. It's also evidence that the FDA has no power to pull these off the market or tell any of the companies through the DoD and the manufacturers to pull these off this market. Essentially, this is a freight train moving forward on the American people. The only thing that will stop this is people rejecting it. And right now, we're at 92% of Americans are rejecting any more vaccination.
Let's talk about, there's so much to hit here, but let's talk about real numbers. We hear about insurance actuaries. We see a lot of other prominent doctors coming out and saying we're seeing a lot of extra deaths, these weird blood clots, all sorts of autoimmune problems, myocarditis, heart attacks. I mean, there's record level deaths happening. From the numbers you've seen with the sudden death syndrome they're talking about, how do we quantify that? What's the real numbers there?
Let's go to the openvaers.com data overlay. That's on my screen right now.
Oh, you got it up.
This is not disputed. This is a weekly update of code written against, and it queries the CDC database. Now, VAERS includes domestic, U.S., and then some ex-U.S. sources that get reported in through pharma and then go in here, including Japan and Germany. So The overall numbers, 31,696, astronomical number of deaths. But let's zero in on Americans. So we toggle this button here at the top, toggle over. Now these American numbers. 14,920 as of October 21st. These are deaths. Now let's look at where they occur. If we take 96 hours or at 4 days, the vast majority of the deaths occur within 4 days of people taking the shot. We know from an analysis by McLachlan and colleagues who's dying? Our seniors. Our senior citizens are dying at an astronomical rate after taking the vaccines, and it's relatively silent. It's happening in our nursing homes, happening in independent living.
It's not just statistics. We see it in the news. My mom took it, my dad took it, my daughter took it, my husband took it, my wife, and then they're dead in 3-4 days.
Absolutely.
Same story over and over again.
And look at here. Look at the number. 70,633 Americans hospitalized, 105,040 urgent care visits. We know from the ICANN data that from the vSafe data, you can pull this up if you can find it on the ICANN website. That's an NGO. Through legal action, lead attorney Aaron Siri prosecuted the CDC and said we must see the vSafe data. vSafe is what people can report on their cell phones after they take the vaccine and what happens to them. The CDC wanted to block release of this important source of data to Americans. Finally, Siri and ICANN get it, and it's a bombshell. Aaron Siri went on Fox News that night when it broke a few weeks ago. This is what we've learned, Alex. 25% of people who take the vaccine are incapacitated the next day. They can't go to work or school. 7 to 8% of them are so sick they end up in the hospital or worse.
And I've seen, whether it's in the UK or here, when they die of it, they call it a COVID.
Well, it's been the attribution of death to the vaccine has been a consistent problem. Let's talk about it. Jessica Rose, a very, very well-respected epidemiologist, estimates for death that the underreporting factor is about 31. We know from a prior Harvard study in 2018 from VAERS before COVID, it could be as much as 100-fold underreported. So think about 100-fold. That's 1.4 million people. 31-fold underreported would be somewhere around 500 to 600,000 individuals.
Just in the U.S.
Just in the U.S. Now, the World Council for Health, an international organization, an umbrella organization for about 70 individual organizations, June 11th of 2022, issues a pharmacovigilance report, not only just on VAERS, but on the UK Yellow Card, the EU UDRA system, and the WHO VigiSafe system. And they declare vaccines are unfit for human use, pull them off the market. They had stern warnings. I give credit to a French lab, actually, in March of 2021. They were the first ones to say, listen, in March, pull these off the market. I was on a paper with Bruno and colleagues, May of 2021, 57 authors, 17 countries, where we declared, we put it to every single government in the world, and we said, we have serious safety concerns. If this can't be rectified immediately, pull them off the market. So I can tell you, Alex, we were within a few months, as you pointed out, we were all neutral to the vaccines, which we should be at first. But once things started to turn bad, looking backwards, knowing that Pfizer knew about 1,223 deaths within 90 days of release of their vaccine, looking backwards, a responsible FDA and Pfizer should have pulled Pfizer off the market before February 1st of 2021, and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson never should have come out.
And now they've got a tiger by the tail, so they're paradoxically trying to persecute you and other Sherry Tinpenny and others who've been vindicated and don't want to be superstars, but are people realizing you were so dead on, separately going, give us amnesty. We're sorry we lied to you. We're sorry everything was fake. We're sorry the CDC's own document, October 2000, predicted all this. It's another question. How did they know that? The first people to do it was the government warning of it. I guess it was whistleblowers inside, maybe. So what do you make of this paradox where you're being persecuted even though you're vindicated? The system's been caught lying at every level. What does that quantify, and what do you think they're going to do next? Because I think it's fair to say, maybe you disagree, this is blown up in their face spectacularly And it has woken up more people across the political spectrum worldwide than any issue ever, and it's not going away. And as we see continued shockwaves from the shots and what's happening, they got a tiger by the tail.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the evidence that I've shared with you. Despite a massive 2-year campaign of incessant ads, public health messaging, complete censorship and distortion of social media through Twitter and Facebook, press briefings, corporate mandates, school mandates, military mandates. Look at the data on my screen. 92% of Americans are saying no more. I mean, this is astonishing. It's blown up in their face. You know what's really happened too is that the Band-Aid has been ripped off the entire vaccine agenda, Alex. And this is now doctors like myself are re-examining the whole rationale for, when I was born, there were 3 vaccines. 3. A child today now faces something like 72 injections. Do you know that children at the day they're born are given hepatitis B antigen vaccine, that 1-year-olds are given influenza vaccine? People are starting to question this aggressive vaccination schedule, actually vaccinating for easily treatable illnesses like bacterial infections like diphtheria and pertussis. People are starting to question the whole thing. I'm talking to more and more parents that say, you know what, we've lost our trust in vaccines overall.
Well, remember back in late 2019, they had an emergency meeting of the UN regulators in Switzerland. And it was like a 2-day meeting. It was 16 hours. We watched it here. We ended up playing about 2 hours of it on air. And they went down the whole row of scientists, including the chief vaccine advisor. And they said, look, even our own scientists and frontline doctors don't want to give it anymore. We're giving too many. We don't do any testing. These are quotes. We're given what Big Pharma tells us, and that's being made by the Defense Department of the U.S. They said that. And we just give it to people. And then it hurts a bunch of people. And the villagers don't trust us. The rural populations, these urban populations, the educated populations, we've got a crisis. And they went on to say, we're about to see total confidence loss in the vaccine program, which we believe done properly and executed correctly for real threats is a real science. They said, we've got to, and then boom, COVID comes in. I'm sure you've seen those clips, but even the UN's own head regulatory board is hitting the panic button going, and then boom, COVID comes in.
That's true. The confidence was eroding. You know, a landmark year was 1986 when the vaccine injury indemnification program came through for the manufacturers. People were already starting to get concerns that this whole vaccine agenda was getting out of control. And there are rare side effects, but there was a trend, growing trend at that time to understand that some neuropsychiatric syndromes, such as Asperger's disease and others, could be related as an idiosyncratic reaction to vaccines. I remember famed Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who came forward and brought this concern. With any product, it's fair and reasonable to be concerned. Doctors who come forward should not be crushed. And what's happened over time, this is before COVID.
The science is about questions.
Yeah, we're asking questions, but this is about vaccines and the history of vaccines not being questioned and not being allowed to have any discourse. This is before COVID. Dr. Paul Thomas in Oregon starts to feel uncomfortable with how this whole vaccine agenda is rolling out through the, over the decades. And he declares in his pediatric practice that the parents can decide what vaccines the children get, as opposed to following this authoritative schedule. And the Oregon Medical Board gets wind of this. They pull his license. They said, you can't practice. He goes, listen, I'm giving people freedom of choice. And you know what Paul did in the time where he was basically out of medicine? He commissioned a study of his patients, half of whom took all the vaccines, half of them didn't. And the ones who didn't take the vaccines, the children, they were healthier. They had lower rates of all types of disorders, asthma, urticaria, various forms of hay fever, Asperger's, and other neuropsychiatric.
It's definitely linked, isn't it, to allergies increasing?
The Thomas data, I think, are very compelling. It's one of the few controlled data sets that we can look at. The vaccines have rolled out, and this has been a big issue with the ICAN group led by Del Bigtree and others, is that vaccines have come out unquestioned without adequate randomized placebo-controlled trials, and there's just been an assumption that they're safe and effective.
So as a layperson, what I see is this: you got the military-industrial complex, people getting rich off of it, big pharma, the politicians, people that want a magic bullet, the general public, take any drug that they put on the market, and we've seen the carnage that's caused by that. And now, as opposition mounted, they said, let's give them the miracle mRNA and let's show them how magic it is, and let's forget all the attacks we did previously for this great miracle that'll make everybody love us, and then it's 10 times worse. That, I think, is the schmuckish view, because I get the average person who works in the medical system cares and loves people, so they can't believe there's other evil people above them. But if we know, in so many of the 20 years, the trials they've done with mRNA, that it works a lot of the time, but part of the time kills you or maims you or liquefies your liver, then they obviously weren't stupid and done mice studies and others and knew this was going to have some big problems. And so you're smart, I'm smart. Obviously, the folks that run things aren't stupid. Doctor, do you think they were just mistaken, or at a higher level, is there some organized evil here?
There is a continued love affair in pursuit of messenger RNA. Now, messenger RNA, remember, is the genetic code for part of a virus or an organism. It has nucleoside analog caps at the 3' and 5' end. Means they're indestructible. A paper from Stanford by Rolkin and colleagues has proven
you can spray them on people.
That it's indestructible.
Remember the Pentagon report they want to do in China? They wanted to spray the caves with it.
The body doesn't break this stuff down. This stuff is indestructible. So every shot is permanent in the human body now. We have very good understanding.
But can it be aerosolized too?
But there are attempts to do this. I'm not an expert in all the routes of administration, but a review paper that's summarized in my Substack this morning has indicated that the history of this is not good. Messenger RNA vaccine for HIV completely failed, caused way too much inflammation and side effects. Now we had COVID-19 vaccines have just been a disaster. And guess what's coming? mRNA vaccines for influenza. And both Pfizer
and cancer.
And Pfizer and Moderna have announced these, and it's going to be combined with the bivalent COVID booster. NTD News yesterday.
Let's hear a record skip. Was interrupted. Start over. I just saw it 2 days ago. They've gone, hey, since there's no approval anymore, we've got a new thing we're rolling out. So it's like the door's blown open, Pandora's box is open. And they just go, now we're gonna, so you'll have a higher uptake. We're gonna mix the new manipulation of mRNA for COVID with the influenza. So tell us what that means.
Yeah, you got that. So as long as the COVID is under emergency use authorization, and now there's a congener of the COVID-19 bivalent vaccine and then messenger RNA influenza vaccine, I imagine that Pfizer and Moderna are going to attempt to get this in under the EUA umbrella. So
it's a loophole for their influenza, their cancer, their anything. As long as they add COVID, we have emergency authorization.
Well, Alex, for a new genetic product, it needs 5 years of development observation. 5 years. They're talking about trying to put these together in a few months. NTD News had Professor David Weissman on, former J&J scientist, actually won many awards there. He made it clear this is going to be a complete disaster because side effects are going to be amplified. Now we're installing the genetic code not only for the COVID-19 lethal spike protein, but also dangerous parts of the influenza antigens. And people are going to get very sick, produce many abnormal proteins in the human body, with no control over the duration or quantity.
And are proteins, abnormal proteins associated with spongiform encephalopathy type diseases?
Well, absolutely. We know with that abnormal proteins can fold, so they can become a prion-like and cause, mad cow, various forms of spongiform encephalopathies in theory. We also know that they're amyloidogenic, the spike protein. Recent paper I've published with Stephanie Senoff has clearly shown this, that they're amyloidogenic, meaning they're rubbery, Alex. Amyloid, think about amyloid as a rubbery biologic substance. No surprise now, the spike protein has been found within blood clots of people who have taken the vaccine. And the morticians have been reporting this for a long time now. When someone dies, the blood is liquefied. It's called undergo lysis. and the morticians actually drain the body out of the, drain the blood out of the body.
And now they can. There's just all these giant.
Right. So that's the problem. They actually.
It's like noodles are being pulled out.
Right. So they're used to draining the body and then infusing the preservative in order to preserve the body. But now the blood doesn't drain, and so they had to dissect the vessels, and they're pulling out ginormous, rubbery, long.
And again, it's only countries that have given these experimental shots, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, the UK, Canada, the US, they're seeing the exact same things.
I've had personal conversations with US mortuary.
So, Doctor, I know you did tell us, but what is that?
That is a cast of a blood vessel. They normally try to access the carotid artery, so there's probably the carotid artery, and they access the blood vessels, and it's easier to access.
Yeah, he just pulled that out of a blood vessel.
Right, and there's one, Alex, there, you can see them.
A foot long.
Oh, yeah.
This is tame what they put up. What the hell is that? This is like a science fiction movie.
It's like a science fiction movie, but let me tell you, in practice, I have patients who have developed blood clots, and they're alive, and they're large ones in their legs and extremities. And one patient in my practice, we've actually had to remove the first rib and actually physically pull it out of a blood vessel in the arm. Another one is still in her leg now. It's over a year, and it's not dissolving as I'm administering blood thinner.
As a normal blood thinner.
Right.
So what do we know what they're made of?
They are made of blood clotting elements loaded with the Wuhan spike protein, which causes folding, what's called amyloidogenic changes.
So your cells are producing spike proteins that then mix with the platelets, and then it's creating these quasi-synthetic clots.
That's correct.
Wow. I interrupted you, though. I'm bad at that with so many points. You were saying you're talking to the coroners.
Well, I have personal conversations with coroners on this to learn the process and is it objective. John O'Looney in the UK has just gone out. He's gone viral and he said, listen, this is going on, and he's describing what he's seen. Ryan Cole, pathologist in Idaho, examining these. I recently published in the journal Neurologic Disorders with Stephanie Senoff and Tony Karagakos from Greece and Greg Nye. Clearly, the rationale for why this is happening, this explains why simultaneously there's neurodegenerative disease, that there is a blood clotting going on. In my practice, in the last week, Alex, I saw 2 cases of blood clots forming 18 months after the last shot.
Wow.
18 months after the last shot. And what's going on is there's some intervening COVID. So getting the respiratory illness even further juices the system for more blood clotting. So in theory, the best would be get COVID, get early treatment, get little systemic exposure, never take a vaccine, and limit the blood clotting risk.
Yeah, I just saw a big study, it's in the stack here, where they looked at all the different countries, and the ones that didn't take the shots and didn't have lockdowns, they got over it very quickly. Those that didn't are still having problems.
Yeah, you'd want to be in Haiti, or you'd want to be in Central Africa. You know, those countries simply just didn't have the resources in their treasuries to buy these vaccines. And they did great. Think about the living conditions in Haiti, and they've had virtually no COVID deaths, and they certainly have 0 vaccine deaths because they haven't given any vaccines.
So bottom line, this is almost like what's the term? Something that goes into a solution and causes a chain reaction, and then somehow the spike protein interfaces with the blood and gels it.
In a sense, like a catalyst. What we know is if the spike protein is physically in the clots, there was some studies actually before the vaccines showing spike protein alone could induce clotting in the absence of platelets, which is very interesting, meaning that fibrin and the other elements really seem to...
It doesn't even need your platelets to do it.
Right, and so the platelets do add on, and obviously in a human being, the platelets add on to this. But this is a very unique blood clot. It's very unique. And the blood clotting that happens, it happens in areas where there's sluggish flow, like the venous drainage system in the brain, the portal vein in the abdomen. But a remarkable paper by Burhild and colleagues in JAMA from 3 Nordic countries. This is stunning, absolutely stunning. They describe within 28 days of the vaccines, and they have Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, and they rule out any COVID. But in 3 small countries, Alex, 7,750 devastating neurologic strokes and blood clots. It's absolutely astonishing what these vaccines are doing on a population level.
I want to go ahead and not just air 3 minutes like you wanted to. It's so good, and Dale's good for us to air it. I want to just take a break and air. It's a 70-minute clip that's on your Rumble account. It's also over Big Trees Highwire. It's excellent. But I want to air most of this clip where they're calling for amnesty, but they're not giving us amnesty. They're not paid for what they've done, and they're still targeting school children with this federal authorization, trying to make it mandatory in schools. So we'll talk about that with Dr. Peter McCullough on the other side, and we have a very important announcement as well on how people can get prepared to deal with this. We'll also get your latest analysis on how we can naturally try to bolster our defenses. That's all coming up. Please stay with us on the special Saturday transmission, and please share the live feed of this when we're streaming it out, and share the archive at band.video like our lives depend on it, because we can have Dr. Peter McCullough with his courage and him being attacked and all these other great people, and we can have this operation, this great crew. But if you, who are awesome, don't share it, it's like a tree falls in the forest, nobody heard it, so it didn't make a sound. Okay? I mean, I cannot stress enough. People are like, oh, Dr. McCullough, you're so great, or Alex, you're so good, or no. Literally, it'd be like if I had a box of matches and trying to build a fire. The freezing cold, I don't have kindling or wood to do it, we don't get the fire. Yes, this broadcast is the match. We have the evidence, got the match right over here. But we've got to have the kindling, and we got to have the logs to set this brush fire in the minds of people. So, literally, I don't want to just strike matches here in a 100-mile-an-hour wind. We get like 500,000 people tune in, live when we stream this. If all of you simply share the video from band.video, we'll get 5-10 million views. That'll be cut up, chain reaction, 100 million views, and we go break some more of the globalist ribs, okay? Because I'm not doing this to lose. I'm doing it to win. So we've got the truth. We're going to stop them. They're coming back with a new attack soon. We're not going to give them amnesty until they've had a Nuremberg trial, and we'll pray for them when they're getting hauled up there after a jury, after they've been found guilty, before we hang their asses for crimes against humanity. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Check out this headline. You probably saw this in the Atlantic. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said we were in the dark about COVID. See, this is that insanity plea I'm talking about. Let's read some of this article because it's fascinating. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty. We can leave out the willful purveyors of actual misinformation. Really? So we're going to leave out Tony Fauci and the NIH and the CDC and the FDA that all lied to us, while forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge. Oh, so there it is. No, let's forgive them. They were making hard calls. They didn't have the information. Los Angeles County closed its beaches in summer 2020 ex post facto. This makes no more sense than my family's mass hiking trips. But we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. We need to forgive the attacks too. Okay, well, let's think about it. Let's go on. All of this gloating and defensiveness continues to gobble up a lot of social energy and to drive the culture wars, especially on the internet. These discussions are heated, unpleasant, and ultimately unproductive. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck. Oh, so it's luck that the high wire was right like 99.9999% of the time. And similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. Oh, wasn't it? The standard saying is that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. I agree with that. But dwelling on the mistakes of history can lead to repetitive doom loop as well. Let's acknowledge that we made complicated choices in the face of deep uncertainty, and then try to work together to build back and move forward. Well, look, there's some of that sentiment that I agree with. I've told you on this show, we've got to learn to forgive. We've got to start having these conversations with our families again. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. Here comes Christmas. Even though we were all banned from the Thanksgiving table and Christmas table last year, like we had, leprosy or something, let's be the ones that forgive so we can go back. But do we forget? Where are we at? So I want to discuss this for a moment, because the concept of amnesty, which is like, let's just drop hands and forget it ever happened, really is on the back of a concept I would say called forgiveness. So I think in some ways, what's being asked of us is to forgive our families that banned us from the tables and were mean to us and said they never wanted to see us or our children again. And I think forgiveness is a good thing. But in order to forgive, there's something that has to happen. First of all, I would really like to take this moment for everyone out there that thought they were opposed to the things that I was saying and were really down with censoring the high wire and all those other things. Could you please articulate for me exactly what it is that we are supposed to forgive? You see, because I don't know. I don't know what you know and what you don't know and what you don't know that you don't know. And I think that that's important in this place of forgiveness. So what are we supposed to forgive? Are we supposed to forgive the fact that, you locked down and took away our jobs, our dreams of having a future? That in that process you destroyed our economy, not just in America, but around the world? Are we supposed to forgive that move? Are we supposed to forgive all the sanitizing and the spraying and the invasive, destruction of our nasal passages as you tested us with a product that in itself couldn't even test properly? And how about all those that died and weren't treated right in hospitals, and we couldn't even get to them to say goodbye, our loved ones, our elderly, our aunts, our uncles, our mothers, our fathers? Instead, we were left outside and they were left alone. We couldn't go to a funeral. And how about all the suicides that took place, and the child abuse and domestic abuse and drug abuse, or turning our children into hypochondriacs? Are they going to forgive us for that, for destroying their education and putting them behind in reading and math? Are we forgiving for all of these reasons, or will our children forgive us? And how about denying people transplants because they didn't want an experimental vaccine that might cause the very problem they needed a transplant for? And then the police brutality, attacking those people that were standing in their truth, that wanted to watch their child play in a sports event without wearing a mask because they knew, as we now know, masks don't work. Should we forgive the president who promised us that he wouldn't force a vaccine upon us, then took away jobs from the military, from police officers, from frontline doctors and firefighters, leaving them with nowhere to go? And then the injuries, people suffering from all sorts of seizures that are unexplained, being left in hospitals, and the lies that were done by the pharmaceutical industry saying that these things never happened. And then those problematic vaccines, not only are they hurting people, but they're still being mandated on our children. Do we forgive while we're continuing to give this product to our innocent children that aren't at risk? And how many headlines of athletes crashing into the floor, unable to ever play again, maybe dead, or all of the people, the performers, the singers that can't get through a concert or can't do a concert any longer. This brand new normal. Is this what we're supposed to forgive and forget and have amnesty for while it's happening right now? And most importantly, as you talk about the luck factor, I guess, well, if you got this right, you were lucky. No, I have to be very clear. We've said many times and shown you proof that we told you that they did not test whether or not the vaccine could stop transmission. During the trials, this is now known to everybody, but we knew it because it was written in our own emergency use authorization in the very beginning. We didn't get lucky. We were reading the science when you were quoting experts that ended up being liars. But how about those doctors that weren't liars? How about the inventor of the mRNA technology? Did he get lucky? Did Robert Malone get lucky when he warned the world, I invented this technology and it's not being used correctly and it's going to cause serious harm? Really? The inventor got lucky? No, what he got was censored. He got shut down by the very people that we're being asked now to give amnesty to. Oh, how convenient. Or what about the doctors that still have their licenses under attack by laws that just got passed in California and are being written in other states, California law, to regulate dissemination of misinformation related to COVID-19, meaning if you said any of the things that now prove to be true, like the vaccine doesn't work, or this virus has a very low death rate, or maybe you should try ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, you could lose your license. Or in the case of the most world-renowned heart doctor in the world, Dr. Peter McCullough, he now has his board certifications that make him a cardiologist being taken away. Why? Because he's been quoting the science from around the world on blood clots, on thrombocytopenia, on myocarditis, the swelling of the heart, which is something he knows better than anyone else about. But still, no, in the moment where his license is being removed and he is under attack and where his certifications are being taken away, we're supposed to give amnesty right now? You see, this is the problem. We are not even through this situation. And I have not heard you articulate. I'm still listening. I'm still listening for exactly what it is you understand I'm supposed to forgive you for. Because there's a word that goes along with forgiveness if we're going to look at sort of the biblical or spiritual nature of this. And that word is repent. You see, in order to deserve to be forgiven, you must articulate what you're being forgiven for. That's called repenting. Or How about, when we think of the court case, where's your remorse? What are you remorseful for? Please explain to me what you think you did wrong here. Because in the Nuremberg trials, which is what may be about to happen should we get a new Senate and Congress here in the United States of America, the doctors did not repent. They did not say we made a mistake. What they said was, we didn't know better. There was no way for us to know. We were following orders. We were just doing what we were told. There was no way to know better. The science changed on us. As it turns out now, obviously sitting in this courtroom, it wasn't okay to test on innocent children products that hadn't been properly safety tested. It wasn't okay to avoid the proof of myocarditis and blood clotting and thrombocytopenia and anaphylaxis and all the things that we were seeing with the products. Okay, yes, benefit of hindsight now, maybe you could say that, but we didn't know it then. Therefore, we must be forgiven. Well, I'm all about forgiveness. But I'm not even ready for that conversation until I hear those that made this mistake, those that continue to censor, those that continue to attack, and those that will not admit that these are not sudden adult dead syndrome deaths. We are not randomly seeing the rise of death and excess mortality around the world because maybe we locked down for the wrong reasons. No, when you stop being mystified by this rise in death and get to the reality that you gave an unproven, untested pharmaceutical product that was killing every animal in the animal trials prior to giving it to human beings, when you admit that just maybe it's the vaccine that is now killing all of us around the world that are dying and collapsing on fields and collapsing on stages. It seems to me we're a long ways away from that. When I think about where Jimmy Kimmel stood in the middle of this, shall we forgive him for saying things like this?
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy. We've still got a lot of pandimwits out there.
I guess it's ironic that he said, vaccinated guy needing, having a heart attack, which is exactly what appears to be happening to the vaccinated people around the world. But if you're unvaccinated and have any need for the hospital, screw you, I want you to die. They're harsh words. It doesn't mean that just harsh words that we shouldn't forgive them. And I suppose that there's those that went through the Holocaust that have to deal with themselves and ask themselves, should I forgive the doctors that were ended up, being hung after the Nuremberg trials? After the courts decided it wasn't okay just because that's what you were told to do, just because you thought you were doing what was right. In the end, it was wrong, and you should have known better. How do we know you know better? When you tell us what you did wrong and that you actually know better. It's time to repent. When you're ready to repent, I'm ready to forgive. And in that moment, and then and only then, will we consider amnesty.
It's November 2022, and that means our historic biggest sale of the year is now live at InfoWarsStore.com. Up to 60% off on our best-selling products when you use promo code 1776 or 1776 at checkout. Finally, back in stock, our super high-quality, organic-based multivitamin. Back in stock, massively discounted at InfoWarsStore.com. Vitamin Mineral Fusion, incredible. Back in stock, massively discounted, InfoWarsStore.com. The Vitamin C Zinc, again, organic vitamin C, 1100% the rose hips and zinc. This is the Linus Pauling formula. You want it, InfoWarsStore.com, and the list goes on and on. DNA Force Plus, Brain Force Ultra, Super Mel Vitality, Fizzing Magnesium, all of it from 40 to 60% off. Use promo code 1776 at InfoWarsStore.com. You're insane with all the stuff going on in this world. If you don't boost your immune system, plus it keeps us on air, a win-win.
InfoWars. Tomorrow's news today.
All right, we're about to talk about something central to winning the war against tyranny, and that's realizing why they target people like myself, why they target people like Dr. Peter McCullough. It's not about stopping us at the end of the day. It's about intimidating others. I was just asking him during that tape we displayed of No Victory, how are you doing through all this? What do you think their end game is? And he basically said what I just said on air, because he's been through the same stuff we have. He understands it. But for you to understand this is critical, and for other doctors and scientists and researchers, but also mothers and fathers and daughters and sons and people speaking out about what they witnessed, having your voice heard. This corruption, this evil can't take place unless they can silence us. So talk about what you've been through personally in this saga, and your advice to others about where we are, because clearly we're winning the fight for hearts and minds right now. The folks that launched this attack are in deep trouble. I think that's very fair to say, but understanding how they're striking back is key to our eventual total victory.
I agree. You know, as a practicing internist and cardiologist trained in epidemiology at University of Michigan, I'm the most published person in my field in the world in history in terms of heart-kidney interactions. I now have 60 peer-reviewed publications in COVID-19. I've made myself a COVID-19 expert. I essentially now have 3 years of on-the-job training, scholarship, fellowship, and I've published the seminal approaches to how to treat the illness, collaborated with doctors all over the world. My commentary and my analysis, my testimony has been beyond reproach in terms of precision and citation. And what has occurred to me is not about me. It's actually about trying to silence others, to hold me out as an example. So I've now lost 2 jobs. Alex, on Friday, I was terminated from my practice job in Dallas without due process, without a clear reason. The uncomfortableness in the room is that neither the people doing the termination nor me wanted the termination. It was pretty obvious that something is going on. I've been stripped of 2 editorships where the impact factor was rising. My track record as an editor at 2 major journals, Reviews in Cardiovascular Medicine and Cardiorenal Medicine, was again beyond reproach. By certified letter or email with no explanation. I've been stripped of 2 professorships here in the state of Texas. One with a follow-up letter that said, if we see our name next to yours, we're going to sue you, so a preemptive lawsuit letter. I have a crushing lawsuit against me by the biggest health system in Texas, with motions are not heard by the judge. I paid for mediation office. Mediation doesn't solve it in a day. It is endless. In the lawsuit, they keep adding additional things into some type of settlement agreement. I have had an entire society. I was the president of the society, the Cardiorenal Society of America, Alex. It was dissolved. My society was dissolved, 600 members, without any, none of these events occurred without any due process. There was no courtesy phone call. There was no board meeting. Nothing.
So when a police officer writes you a ticket for driving 10 miles over the speed limit, you have a day in court and they tell you what you did. It's very Kafkaesque. They won't even tell you what you've supposedly done.
No, these are 1 or 2 sentence letters. You know, a professor of medicine status is a status that's hard-earned after decades of scholarship and work clinical care. When there is a problem, there is a due process. There's faculty senate, and there is a discussion of what was said and who agrees and who disagrees. When there's a journal, there's an editorial board meeting, and there's a discussion if there's an outgoing editor.
Well, we know who's behind it. It's DHS and the Disinformation Governance Board. That broke a week ago. Confirmed documents that they are targeting and harassing scientists and doctors that challenge the official story, because the official story is a lie.
It's reasonable to assume that powerful government agencies, or working through intermediaries, consultants, actually try, mechanisms to cover.
Well, that's what it says. They use the boards and think tanks and NGOs to carry it out.
Right. They probably are working through intermediaries, and there's likely money is being transferred as emergency countermeasure funding. Now, I can't verify any of this, but I am telling you, this has the look and feel of a government operation against its own people, targeting people of very high profile like yourself and myself. And again, the message is actually not for us. We actually get stronger and louder. We're perfectly fine. In fact, this is very similar to that Star Wars scene where Darth Vader's going to strike down Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he says, Darth, if you strike me down, I'll come back even more powerful. And it's true. It's not about us, Alex. It's about silencing everybody else.
And that is the key. So let's talk about building our new own economies. Let's talk about a great law that Trump passed that allowed doctors with licensure to operate all over the United States. I know Tucker Carlson covered this a week ago. Foster Colson, headed up by you. There are a lot of great telephonic medicine, a lot of great online medicine, but you guys have launched the Wellness Company, which I am so proud to be promoting, which is going to be a big part of the show now, because there's a lot of other great groups out there, but I know you're the best. I know that Foster Colson is a great manager and really done great companies before. You guys are putting the very best groups together. People can find out about it at Online Health Now, one word, onlinehealthnow.com, and we'll put that URL up on screen, there in your name key. But tell us about this, because this is exciting. When big pharma and medicine is being bought off, we still have free market rights to go out and choose the market where we see fit and basically displace this tyranny.
What's occurred over the last 3 years has taught Americans that trust is everything in their healthcare providers. Doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, other allied health professionals. Among our team was started to be fracturing, where people walked off the job because they didn't like what they were seeing was going on. Many felt the oppression of the vaccines. And we've said for a while that there must be an alternative. There must be something else than this authoritarian, totalitarian takeover of medicine. And e-commerce juggernaut Foster Colson out of Canada has really stepped up, and he's been working feverishly for months. He reached out to myself, we formed actually a what's called Chief Medical Board. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer of the company. I've taken a board position. Richard Ammerling, formerly Dean of a School of Medicine, a very renowned nephrologist, is heading up the medical affairs. Heather Gessling, a family physician from Missouri, leading up the clinical details. And then we have Harvey Risch, who's recently retired from Yale University in epidemiology. He is our chief epidemiologist. He's not a practicing doctor, but he's been a frequent contributor with me on Fox News now for several years.
Quantify how big this is. You have a license, they have a license, the system's trying to stop it. What happens when real doctors and scientists get together and create their own systems? That is the absolute libertarian way to counter this.
Because we have the power of not only creating websites and apps, but creating what's called verticals. The verticals, there is an entire vertical of healthcare, of telemedicine doctors. Many of them, the groups are working in coalescing to provide 24/7 healthcare through your phone.
So bottom line, there's a massive attack on doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, scientists, researchers. They're all looking for a home. We get top names with top funding to then create the new future.
That's exactly right. And so the doctors are coming on board. Issues like malpractice and electronic records and all of that now doctors are being relieved of that through this new system.
That's something great Trump did. Let's go back to the beginning. Trump passed this law getting this done.
I give him a lot of credit. He moved quickly on many aspects of the pandemic, but this one was big. This was part of some of the relief measures where doctors then had so much more freedom in terms of their practice using telemedicine. The telemedicine technology got better. But it's the practice of medicine, Alex, that can actually be integrated with labs taken in the home. So someone comes out to the home, can get a blood sample. We now have integration with diagnostics, so people can get x-rays, ultrasounds, etc.
Sure, we can use the technocracy's new economy against them, that everything's integrated.
Right, and so the integration part is key. Another key part is pharmacies. You know, we have the big brand name pharmacies that worked against patients and doctors. That's CVS, Walgreens, and others. But the community pharmacies, they were the heroes. Now the community pharmacies are aligned in this type of approach as a vertical.
So that which doesn't kill us only makes us stronger. The hell of the last 3 years, though, with resistance is producing the future of our health.
That's right. And with absolutely no impediment to receiving high quality care, receiving the medicines that people need, and getting it in a timely fashion. There's verticals for health coaches and other allied health personnel. nutraceuticals and supplements. So there's an online store. Foster Coulson got into this actually helping the Zelenko Foundation, Zev Zelenko, and his innovation with the Z-Stack. And now the wellness company has been born. It literally, the doors, it just hit its opening, if you will, just a few weeks ago. Foster Coulson came down. He was in the Tucker Carlson studio, did an hour-long program with Tucker. Very, very dynamic. And
OnlineHealthNow.com. And there have been other great groups trying this. They saved so many lives with therapeutics. We saw so many of the big pharmacies gouging people, not giving them ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, not giving them the steroid aerosolizers. But it was the online folks that got around it and really saved millions of lives. And now you guys, with the top people and real funding, are now launching this to really be the future of medicine and a counter to the free market, to big pharma's takeover of much of our medical system.
That's completely correct. And, you know, let's give credit to these groups that really got things going. So we had Ben Marble and MyFreeDoctor.com, basically a charity service. Ben's delivered care under testimony in the U.S. Senate. Ben indicated he has treated with his group 300,000 Americans with COVID. I mean, this is a stunning accomplishment. Frontline Critical Care Network.
And almost no deaths.
Yeah, just a handful of deaths. Frontline Critical Care Network, Paul Merrick and Pierre Corey. FLCC is a delivery mechanism. American Frontline Doctors, Simone Gold. Give credit to these. Speak with an MD was another one. These organizations, many.
I can tell you, look, I got COVID, and I've had flu, I've had other stuff, and I'm a pretty healthy guy. I went to see every 3 or 4 years. I felt like a gorilla was on my chest. Almost killed my dad, my mom. My wife is like an athlete, and she was like, I need to go to the hospital, I can't breathe. And then I got involved with one of the telephonic doctors we had on the show, and they got me, and within hours, I felt a lot better. Within a day, almost completely better. It was like night and day. And if I had gone to a mainline doctor, I'd been in the hospital on a ventilator dead.
Absolutely. And you know, the U.S. government and the agencies and all the countermeasure money didn't give a penny to these telemedicine services.
They gave $50,000+ to put somebody on a ventilator.
That's true. It was all counterproductive. These telemedicine companies were heroes. Many of them, I think, would probably be very attracted to fold in with the wellness company and be well supported. I'm really proud of the effort. I know my practice will be migrating onto the platform. I'm going to be much more flexible. I'll have the alacrity to do what I need to do, because patients nowadays, they expect to get a doctor by their cell phone and have a communication and be able to head off some disaster before it happens. The only way we can do it is to...
So this is educated doctors and researchers and pharmacists that are ready to deliver. And again, we'll put that back on screen, the official website. But when you go to OnlineHealthNow.com, I'm working to get them, but I'm doing it right now to support it as a sponsor, because I totally trust Dr. Peter McCullough. I know how great the funding is of this, all the folks are getting involved in. So go to OnlineHealthNow.com. It is so important that you have access to real doctors, real pharmacists, real folks that can send you to other trusted doctors in your area, nurse practitioners in your area, testing facilities that are really trying to help you. OnlineHealthNow.com. Because again, this isn't just online. This is creating a network of the future.
It's true. You know, initially it has to start out online, but I may be able to, in Dallas, actually have the first kind of physical installation of the company and be able...
You're telling me off air you're feverishly working on that.
We're working on this very hard. It needs to happen because Americans right now have lost their trust. I have so many patients that say, listen, my doctor has actually forced this vaccine on me and I'm not going to take it. Other patients, Alex, have been discharged. They've been thrown out of their doctor's office because they won't take a vaccine.
Oh, I know people in Austin that have children, and their pediatricians are firing their patient because they won't give their 7-year-old a shot. I mean, that is, can you speak to that?
You know, I can tell you that is an abrogation of the Hippocratic Oath. It's an abrogation of the Declaration of Helsinki in terms of full informed consent. These COVID-19 vaccines are still fully experimental. No one can receive any pressure, coercion, or threat of reprisal. According to the Nuremberg Code, these doctors have trampled all over the code of ethics. They've lost their minds.
We were talking during the break when we were airing that Dale Bigtree piece about who runs. We know the Davos Group's the mouthpiece, but why would the people that did this run something out like this? They had to know it was going to cause these problems. They weren't stupid. I guess, depopulation. It's so reckless. Destroy faith in the system, cause a societal collapse. We know they want a post-industrial world in 2030.
In our book, Courage to Face COVID-19, investigative true crime author John Leake spends some time on the World Economic Forum, led by Klaus Schwab. And within a few months of the COVID-19 crisis emerging, he publishes a book, COVID-19 and the Great Reset. What John Leake says is take it seriously. He wrote the book. Take the book seriously. He says this is a very narrow window of time that is available to achieve a new world order. He's been writing about the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is not changing industry. It's about changing human beings and changing the nature of populations, Alex. This is a diabolical scheme, and it's in the open.
And that's why they have the SCGs and all this UN control once they get these digital currencies in, deciding where you can spend money. That's why it's a revolutionary act, not just to get independent medicine, independent prescriptions, and real diagnoses. We have to build the new systems. That's why OnlineHealthNow.com, the wellness company, is so critical, is when we got some of the Clinton Foundation documents 6-7 years ago when WorldNet Daily sued and got them, the Clintons, when they first got elected, were obsessed with shutting down populist, conservative, and nationalist infrastructure. They didn't want an online newspaper. They didn't want filmmaking. They didn't want doctors that were conservative, because then people are going to gravitate towards that. This is how we build the new world, is the new economy.
It's true. It's the situation where the institutions are so corrupt. They've been so distorted. The thinking of the mind, Alex, is so far gone. Let me give you an example. I was at a live program yesterday at the University of Texas in Dallas.
I was about to say, I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to give you the floor for the next 20 minutes, because you really get my brain firing. We've covered so many wild topics. We've hit so many different angles. I'm going to shut up now. You're going to host a show for 20 minutes here and just start over with everything you haven't hit, because they're trying to suppress what you're saying. They're more scared of you than anybody in medicine, so we need to hear unfiltered Dr. Peter McCullough right now.
I wanted to start out with an example of how the human mind is being distorted. We've covered COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, the virus, the COVID-19, the illness, and this distortion of human thought that has occurred. And it's been described as mass formation or a fear-driven trance that people are in. But the human mind is changing rapidly. Thought patterns are contagious, spreading from one person to another. And it's not just regarding COVID-19. I'll give you an example. There is a relative sudden confusion regarding gender, man or woman. And in 2021, the American Medical Association launched a campaign stating that doctors should no longer put the gender assignment on a birth certificate. So for the millennia of understanding gender, man versus woman, suddenly that was all out the window. The entire industry of knowing the gender before birth and having a nursery be pink or blue out the window. This is in 2021. I was at a live program last night in Richardson, Texas, at the University of Texas at Dallas, with Senator Bob Hall, and we had many prominent doctors there. We were honoring him, and we gave speeches. But right next door to us was an event. It was actually a retirement party in the Alumni Center there. But the person leading the event was a large man, clearly over 6 feet tall. But he was fully dressed as a woman. And it appeared to be with makeup and a dress and all the accompaniments there. And there were alumni there, conservatively dressed, nodding their heads and listening to what he had to say. And it was just a snapshot in my mind that I'm probably not going to forget, but of how universities have changed as an institution, how things have changed. There's been a clear promotion of gender ambiguity, gender change, transsexualism. There is a promotion, there's no doubt about it. Everyone's aware of the Vanderbilt University now Center for Gender Change Surgery. Now, as a doctor, I can tell you that the vast majority of individuals are either XX that they're women or they're X, Y, and they're men. There's a few hermaphrodites in between, but it's extremely rare. This large shift towards gender confusion, or in fact not assigning gender and then having a child try to decide their gender before puberty and undergo surgery and hormonal manipulation. In my conservative interpretation as a doctor, that is distorting the human body, the God-given gift that we all have. There's a distortion of that through this relatively sudden gender confusion that's fallen down on human beings. So through a series of destabilizing events, and what has occurred now with disrupted presidential administrations, contested elections, this injection of gender confusion, COVID-19 pandemic. We're under an emergency for COVID-19 now, yet people don't see any emergency around them. We're actually under an emergency for a monkeypox emergency. President Biden declared a national monkeypox emergency. The World Health Organization declared a national monkeypox emergency. When we look around ourselves, we don't see any emergency. There's no perception that there's a calamity occurring anywhere. What we see is a series of intentional events. These are intentional events. They're global. They appear to be coordinated. And in our book, Courage to Face COVID-19, the website is couragetofacecovid.com. We outline there is a biopharmaceutical complex, and at the top we believe it's the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, the entity they formed called CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation. CEPI funded as a vaccine incubator, that the only response to a pandemic would be mass vaccination. And then a coordination with all the major health authorities, CDC, NIH, and FDA in the United States, the MHRA in the UK, TGA in Australia, EMA in Europe, with the major pharmaceutical industry. And I think Americans have gotten this confused. Americans have pointed out that Big Pharma is the villain, that really Pfizer or Moderna is the villain. Well, as we understand it in our book, Pfizer and Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca outside the United States, now Novavax inside the United States, they are suppliers, and in a sense, they're almost figurehead suppliers. Under the EUA products, and I can tell you this is for sure with anthrax, through smallpox, monkeypox, and with SARS-CoV-2, for sure, these are military products. And on my website now, on America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, you can find the most recent podcast. It's going viral right now that I conducted with Alexandria Sasha Laripova. And we outline here a clear fact pattern that the COVID-19 vaccines and the other related products are military products, that this is a military operation, that DARPA, the military research unit, and then BARDA, the NIH unit, they work in concert. They had a plan to use messenger RNA technology, stated many years in advance that they were going to use this technology. Here's the graphic right here. This is the ADEPT P3 program. Look at this, 60 days to stop a pandemic. 60 days to stop a pandemic. It even has an email. This was up in 2017. Look at the date, 2017. The program starts years before that. Another piece to the puzzle is the movement of billionaires. So people are very familiar with Bill Gates and how through antitrust and the browser controversy that he quits being a software juggernaut and becomes a philanthropist. Well, all of his same tendencies as in terms of antitrust, in terms of collusion, are transferred into the Gates Foundation, which becomes very predatory, pushing mass vaccination all over the world. Another billionaire is Stéphane Bainzel, who was leading bioMérieux. And bioMérieux under Jacques Chirac commissions the construction of the Wuhan Institute of Virology Biosecurity Lab Level 4, the BSL Level 4. That's Stéphane Bainzel, a billionaire working for bioMérieux. What happens in 2011 after he finishes construction of the lab in Wuhan, China, 2011? He leaves his giant company and joins a one-person company in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Moderna. And then he starts working with the NIH on crafting the patent for the Moderna vaccine. This starts in 2011, and the vaccine comes forward. What I'm telling you is the COVID-19 vaccines are a product of incredible collaboration, collusion, if you will, between a syndicate that is formed. This occurred long before President Trump. These vaccines were not developed under Operation Warp Speed. Operation Warp Speed became a moniker for getting these quickly through any type of regulatory hurdles, but the concept of messenger RNA was born a long time ago. And we have a situation where the biopharmaceutical complex now is so powerful that nothing can stop it, that it has full cooperation from the intelligence community, has full cooperation through all the public health agencies. And as we peel back the onion here, and every time it's either through the court action and discovery or through the FOIA mechanism, the Freedom of Information Act mechanism, we get evidence of this. So for instance, American First Legal through FOIA has the fact pattern and the evidence that the CDC and government agencies were regularly meeting with Twitter and with Facebook to craft the government false narrative. How were they crafting the narrative? They were suppressing certain users who were bringing information forward on, the early treatment of COVID-19. They were deleting certain accounts or banning accounts to kind of tailor how the messaging would be heard globally on the platform. And then they were promoting pro-vaccine messaging throughout the social media network. A whole variety of units arose that were fact-checking units that had funding that was trackable back to the biopharmaceutical complex. These fact-checkers were mainly anonymous, and they put out false counterclaims. So if I made a particular statement and I cited the evidence, a fact-checker would come out anonymous and say, Dr. McCullough is wrong. Well, based on what? There was no justification nor any authority for this fact-checker to put out a false counterclaim. These almost invariably trace back to the biopharmaceutical complex. And that's the reason why this show is so aptly named InfoWars. It is a war of information out there. Then there's disruptive forces. So I'll give you one disruptive force. He's right here in Austin, Texas, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan starts to bring people on, and with his large audience, far larger than mainstream TV, initially brought on Brett Weinstein and Pierre Corey, talking about the virus and and ivermectin because Joe had received it. Then he brings me on in December. I give a full outline of the virus, early treatment, and the vaccines. Then he brings on Dr. Robert Malone, and not a clinician, but someone who's been a vaccine consultant. Malone builds this out, and the jaw-dropping Rogan interview occurs in January of 2022 when he brings on Majid Nawaz from the UK. And when he brings on Majid Nawaz, Rogan's jaw is dropped on the table because Majid said, yes, this is part of a bigger plan. This is about digital currency. It's about these global digital passports, social credit scores, a global method of human control that tracks all the way up to the World Economic Forum and what Klaus Schwab has put out as the fourth industrial revolution. It's clear this is all falling into place. It's a mind-blowing reality. And when I went on with Steve Bannon recently, who is a terrific individual, I've got a chance to know him. I have tremendous respect for him, and I'm not a hardcore right-wing person at all. I'm very much a political moderate, and I've told Steve that. But what Steve said is, thank God you guys wrote the book. Alex Jones has got a terrific new book out, Reset. that thank God you wrote the books, because you can hang on to them. They have citations and they're not going to be corrupted. What Bannon says is you can already see it, that the corruption of the electronics is happening. And the disruptive forces are people like myself, Alex Jones, I'll tell you, Joe Rogan, I'll tell you another one, Elon Musk. Elon Musk buying Twitter is disruptive, because now this entire global censorship and false narrative plan has now gotten a ripple in the matrix. This is almost like a dark force where now there's a disruption that's occurred. Hero doctors all over the world have come forward, and we've seen medical censorship for the first time. What you've heard today, as a prominent doctor with a spotless clinical and research track record, I could be the first doctor in history stripped of my residency and fellowship and my credentials for purely political reasons by operatives that almost certainly are government operatives that are trying to advance a false narrative.
But I don't see that as a sign of their strength. I see it as a sign of their weakness.
It's entirely possible. What we're seeing signs of cracking. Let me give you an example. Just having Ron DeSantis have a narrow win, with that Ron bringing in Joe Ladapo. Joe and I published.
Oh, and he's devastating.
And he's
the Surgeon General
of Florida. He's been absolutely devastating. I'll tell you another one. Disruptive force. She spoke at CPAC just after me. Kari Lake, running for governor of Arizona. Trump and Steve Bannon were very gracious to Kari.
Well, that's the good news. As negative as their attacks are, it's only triggered the world to wake up.
Absolutely. We have governor races. I've mentioned Lake in Arizona, but also Scott Jensen, a physician in Minnesota, Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania. I had a chance to meet all of them. Senator Ron Johnson's up for re-election. He's been our strongest U.S. senator, by far, national hero. And there are 47 congressmen, Alex, that wrote a letter to Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense. These 47 congressmen are heroes. They told Lloyd Austin, drop the mandates, drop the vaccines. They're not safe. They're not effective. Call back our soldiers who are dismissed and give them back pay.
Wow. Well, we've been going over an hour and a half here with you. And again, you go on Fox 2-3 minutes here and there and make great little points. People don't get to hear the full analysis you're engaged in. In closing, other key points you think viewers listening should be aware of?
I think people at this point in time, and I said it in my new Substack, Courageous Discourse, today, my issue at the end, I always give patients something to do, the public something to do. The next time you're approached with a vaccine, and I'm not anti-vaccine, I've taken every single vaccine up to the COVID-19 vaccines. I didn't skip a one. My mom had me take them. My kids took them. I am not an anti-vaccine doctor. But let me tell you this, on Courageous Discourse, at the bottom of that Substack, I tell you, listen, you're going to go into the doctor. If you're going to take another vaccine, you better ask if messenger RNA is in it, because it's clear they've already signaled that they are going to try to have messenger RNA become a product line that's going to get into our body.
Without approval.
Yeah, without any type of proper oversight, development, or approval. And this is permanent. Everything we can tell, this is permanent. This permanently changes the human body. The messenger.
This is a revolution over our bodies, a revolution over choice.
It's just what Klaus Schwab talked about. Change.
Let's take over the bodies.
Yeah, he, in our Substack, John Leake wrote a really fun piece, and I did one on Laura Ingraham too, that Klaus Schwab reminds us of Ernst Stavros Blofeld, the head of Spectre in the Bond movie. If you can get a picture of Blofeld, the head of Spectre in Bond, that's who Schwab reminds us of. And Schwab doesn't.
Well, they usually don't ever show Blofeld; they show the cat.
Yeah. But they show Blofeld. There he
is.
Schwab doesn't conceal it. There's some footage of him wearing almost like a Darth Vader, a black shield type.
Klingon outfits.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. He's talking about changing the human body. He's had a love affair.
He says it's a revolution. They're taking our bodies over, and so is his high priest, Noah Yuval Harari.
Well, yeah, I tell you, most people can't watch Harari, and I can tell you, my Christian friends and relatives and close circles say they can't look at him because he is
a demon.
Yeah, he is the representation of evil.
They are definitely making a run at humanity right now. With the pedophilia and the open borders and the currency devaluation. We just have to mobilize and say no to it. But I'm going to say this again. If you go to Online Health Now, that's one word, onlinehealthnow.com, there are so many great telephonic medicines, so many groups out there, but you're with heavy hitters. You are the platinum standard of this, and I'm so excited it's launched for people to call in, get real medical help, real prescriptions, real diagnoses. Onlinehealthnow.com. Speak a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm very proud to be the Chief Scientific Officer for the wellness company. I took that board position led by e-commerce juggernaut from Canada, Foster Colson. Just had a exclusive interview on Tucker Carlson. Very dynamic young man who's really making it happen. Open for business now and growing, taking on doctors, other healthcare providers on the platform. But very importantly, people sign up for a very low monthly fee, and they get the access, they get the on-demand that they want. We will never have another ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine prescription block, ever.
And again, credit goes to Trump. He greenlit all this medical stuff. Some was good, some was bad. The Regeneron was good. You know, he promoted vitamin D, vitamin C, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. I mean, he was just saying, hey, I trust the doctors, do it. But trusting Doctors of America, getting that law passed, before you guys couldn't do this.
It's true. So he enabled that the enablement of telemedicine, and to give Trump credit, I think Trump has always had an eye for therapeutics. He was incredibly undermined by the White House task force, the head of the National Immunology Allergy Division, Dr. Anthony Fauci. There were so many in the deep state, Alex, who are responsible for this catastrophe that happened. I estimate now that, of course, there was a learning curve on how we did this, that 2/3 of 10 million hospitalizations and 2/3 of 1 million lives lost could have been spared if we would have had the doctors be able to step into action and save America.
And now it's happened with Online Health Now, the wellness company. You seem more empowered than ever. Their attacks haven't worked on you. Don't let attacks on Dr. Peter McCullough make you as a doctor or a scientist shut up. We're winning. We've been vindicated. And I don't see in closing how the power structure recovers from this. I know Trudeau in Canada is talking about new lockdowns. We don't take shots. I know they're talking about new lockdowns in Australia. I know that China is the model. They're still under lockdowns. This is their new governance model, which is how they bring in the QR codes, universal basic income, the social credit score, the carbon tax. This is their big assault. This is the big issue. And COVID is just the shoehorn or the foot in the door to you know, the beachhead.
It appears to be the case, and the world is looking at America as really the battleground for this, the battleground between totalitarianism and freedom. And if there's one thing Americans can galvanize around is freedom. I think these elections coming up, Alex, on Tuesday are going to be absolutely pivotal in terms of a shift. Every candidate ought to come out and tell Americans where they stand on health freedom, where they stand on freedom of choice, where they stand on these vaccines, lockdowns, masking, and other things. That's, I think, the issue on the table.
I agree, but what you just said is so huge. We have their most draconian pushes for mandatory shots and targeting 6-month-olds and up, and trying to make school kids take them, and just ridiculous mandates. But we have the biggest awakening against it as well.
It is so true, and so many times this is what it takes, a time of crisis where great people rise forward. I mentioned many of them. The reason why this is so important is because the rest of the world's looking at America. There are countries so far down the road on this, and Australia comes to mind, Canada, New Zealand,
Italy.
Italy. This is extraordinary that we have an opportunity to turn the tables before things get worse. A lot of instability in Brazil right now with Bolsonaro.
Well, they definitely stole that. But I mean, that's it. If they can't set the precedent now with this, they're going to lose. I mean, this is their full assault.
It's true, and people ask, who are these people? Well, what is in their mindset? And we mentioned what we think the biopharmaceutical complex, people at the top, but how could the human mind become so distorted? Not everybody's getting kickbacks on this. Not everybody's getting their pockets filled, but the human mind is not thinking correctly.
It's mob psychology.
Yeah, and it's basically, I think there is some truth to mass formation. There's a lot of discussion. Is it a psy-op,
And I think the answer is yes. It is.
I have a stack of articles I didn't even get to where military groups admit they engage in psyops.
It is a psyop, a psychological operation on the people, but the psychopathology that's happening from person to person is mass formation. I think.
No, I agree. I mean, it's a mix of all of them. Absolutely. So again, onlinehealthnow.com, onlinehealthnow.com. Check it out, folks, and move away from the power structure, the corrupt system. Go with Dr. Peter McCullough, who we should champion and support and lift up as the example, like the Elon Musk of medicine, to build our new system, our new world, our new Atlantis. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Incredible that you came to town. We really appreciate you, and God bless you, Dr. Peter McCullough.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I'm going to come back with some final news stories and close this out, and an excerpt of that bombshell interview from now 12 years ago of Alan Watt, where he predicted the whole Great Reset and the New World Order. He died a few years ago, but there's a multi-hour interview we did with him years ago. It's now resurfaced, going viral. It's also posted at Infowars.com for free. We're going to air an excerpt of it. Coming back, we'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm pointing my finger at you. And I'm also pointing right back at myself. You forget to take your multivitamins. You forget to take your vitamin D3. You forget to take your Brain Force Plus. You forget to take DNA Force Plus. You forget to take DX3, and you know it makes your life better, and you know it makes you healthier, and you constantly forget, and when you remember to do it, you're a lot healthier. This stuff will blow you away, plus it funds our operation. We have the biggest sale of the year going right now at InfoWarsStore.com with promo code 1776. Go to InfoWarsStore.com and use promo code 1776 to get up to 60% off on these best-selling products. The lowest deal is 40%. Most of the sales are 60 or 50% when you use promo code 1776. There's too many products to tell you about them all. They're all kick-ass. Keep us on the air. Please continue to support, and I love you, and I thank you. 1776 at InfoWarsStore.com.
This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache.
This is the heart of 1776.
It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
What a transmission this evening. I just hope everybody shares the live link, and I hope you share the archive that will be posted soon at band.video. Dr. Peter McCullough, all the information we've covered is simply amazing. But I wanted to go back to a guy that's just so well-researched and so amazing, who's gone on to be with the Lord. That's Alan Watt here in just a moment. And then we're going to restream this until 4 p.m. tomorrow. I'll do the live Sunday show. But I hope you'll join us for, and I hope that you will share. But separately, I knew that Dr. Peter McCullough was doing this a few months ago. I've been approached by a lot of telephonic medicine and groups. But I was waiting until they actually launched it. He didn't even want to talk about it today when he was on. But this is revolution. Funding independent healthcare, funding patriots, funding groups that will actually give you therapeutic care during an emergency. Go to one group that will actually give you the care you need. onlinehealthnow.com. onlinehealthnow.com. Become a subscriber and get all the free information after you're a subscriber that's just posted constantly, and then all the products and medical advice you need to get, and just everything right there in one spot. onlinehealthnow.com. All right. I'm going to end this transmission. A lot of news I didn't get to. A lot I will get to tomorrow night, 4 p.m. Central. I want to thank the group for the great job they've done. Here's an excerpt of the 2+ hour breakdown that's on band.video right now with the great late Alan Watt.
I'm Alan Watts, and I'm an author and researcher into geopolitics, really, and history. I follow where the world has been, the techniques that were used to bring them to those stages, and apply them to where we are today and how the future is planned. I've researched so many books. I've got a library of my own. I like paperback books, or at least hardback books, because they're permanent records of the past. And if you can't understand the past, you understand the present or the future. I've also been in the music business, heavily involved for years. And I saw how culture creation worked from the top, and how generations were swayed into new fashions, new ideas. I've been following the histories of what's now called the New World Order for many, many years. And I try to go into the books written by the big players, the technocrats themselves, those famous people like Kissinger's, the Brzezinskis and so on, the Huxleys, the Lord Bertrand Russells, who all worked for the same organizations. And I came to the conclusion, really, there was only one big organization with many subcategories. These boys tend to publish the world that they saw coming into view, and they wrote it in their own hand, basically. They told us where they were taking the world. And when you start studying these things about the age of 14, 15, or even younger, and reading their books, and you live long enough, you will see that the world has turned out exactly as they planned. This can't be coincidence. And who can really write up a wish list and make it happen globally, unless there is an organization very, very powerful, probably the only organization really on the planet, an organization that can fund all sides, all oppositions, and using this synthesis of conflicting parties, they can literally make the world come into view as they planned. They plan in centuries, and the astonishing thing is when you go into the United Nations, which was loosely based on the Soviet system, they plan certain parts of their agenda in 50-year plans, some in 100-year plans, and some even in 150-year plans for different aspects of it. The Russells, the Huxleys and so on, Brzezinskis, also use the same terminology with their long-term plans. And you've got to understand too that nothing in culture comes out from the grassroots. Even Plato talked about that thousands of years ago. He said that if it was a grassroots movement really coming from the people, then those in charge, the dominant minority, would lose control. Therefore, every change in culture, right down to fashion and music, and this was written 2,300 years ago, had to be authorized from the top and promoted from the top if it fitted with the continuance of control over the public. And these are sciences which were taught down through the ages, are still taught today to the big players, and they've used it to the full in the 20th century, now into the 21st century with the use of television, mass communications, radio, etc. Everything has been given to us for the appropriate time and stage in the actual planning. And for those who are coming into this kind of study, it's best to go into the books, as I say, written by the big players themselves. They love to boast. Kissinger's got lots of books out there, so has Brzezinski. These are probably two of the master players in geopolitics. Try to stay away from all the conspiracy books. They're also put out there on purpose, very fascinating books, but they lead you in circles forever without giving you the overall picture to the fact that every generation has a purpose up until this present time. And in a post-industrial era, these big boys have decided, and their masters too, that we are simply superfluous and they no longer need us. Hence, we have big foundations coming forward and organizations like the Optimum Population Trust who have decided to come out openly and demand that governments start radically reducing the populations. We are now the useless eaters, as Lord Bertrand Russell called us. Our ideas, our opinions on everything, our worldview, even to do with population and the fake view that we're overpopulated, is all projected to us by the mainstream media, working in concert for their masters. And we begin to parrot what we hear through repetition. And that's so important, is repetition with slogans and catchphrases. And once you hear it happening in your own local group here in review, then you know it's working. And the camera can make anything appear to be true. You'll see that in India, for instance, they always use the same streets of Bombay to make you think that you're massively overcrowded, and that's the impression people think of the entire Indian continent. The Indian continent is huge, with thousands and thousands of miles of forest where no one lives. It's the same in Africa too. China, being the model state for the world, for instance, put into effect the United Nations policy to the extreme with its population reduction and the movement of people off of the rural areas into cities. They said that years ago. Right now we're in the process of moving 200 million more people off into the major cities, and that's the major newspapers. The cities appear to be crowded because everyone's being moved into them. In the Western world since the 1950s, again under the term of urban sprawl and stopping urban sprawl, the Western countries also signed agreements to no more building in the outskirts and of the major cities. All existing buildings have to be used or else knocked down and replaced with even higher ones. But regardless, with the immigration and the free flow of people now from third world countries, the Western countries appear to be overcrowded. And yet the UN's own statistics show, and so the national census show, that the Europeans, for instance, Canadians and Americans who have been here for a couple of hundred years are actually in decline. So the overpopulation problem is simply an image projected by the media as more and more people are crammed into the same cities and they bring more immigrants into the building. But I also realized the system of schooling when I was going to school was bogus. The histories were bogus, and I was very, very lucky to have access to very old libraries, town libraries. Some of them had reference books going back into the 1700s, written at the time. When you compared the histories I was being taught in school to the histories that were written at the time, they were completely different. You had a deeper understanding of how geopolitics had been used in the past to even populate the country of Canada. London couldn't get immigrants to go off into the new colonies. What they did for Australia was to create so many laws that you couldn't help but break them, and poverty, and therefore stealing a loaf of bread to feed you or your family would get you deported to Australia with your family. That's how they populated Australia. Fine. They created the laws for crime. With Scotland, they had a rebellion, which could have been rigged, and I often think it was, and the whole of Scotland was punished. And they deported millions of the Scots off to the Americas to populate the Americas. This is geopolitics in action. That's how it works. And whole peoples are often moved from their land because the elite masters want them elsewhere to be productive for themselves, the masters. When you look at the strategy for the US and Canada, again, long-term strategy, long-term planning, you'll find that the big corporations of their day, the Hudson's Bay companies, the Fraser companies, were getting charters to own the land before Canada was Canada or US was the US. It was simply called the Americas. These are private international corporations that had the power of life and death over everyone who lived within their areas. The Queen or the King had a consulate in every country. Lieutenant General or Governor General, or still running Canada today, who represents the Queen. They have all the powers over life and death of subjects under that government. How we stopped rebellion in the past was to give us an idea of what they called democracy. They knew from the Chartist movement in Britain, for instance, and elsewhere, other countries, people were demanding rights for the first time. And so once again, they gave us champions to speak on our behalf, which calmed the people down, thinking for the first time in history, the people were involved in their own destiny creation. And nothing was further from the truth. Because the planners knew that once you bring people into your country or continent, create real wealth for them and get businesses going, clear the land, drain the swamps, and so on, we can take it all away from you through laws 200 years down the road. And that's what's happening now. Long-term geopolitics once more. And if you think I'm kidding about this, go into the history books written at the time. They're still there in some of the libraries. And you can also go into the art of geopolitics. There's even videos on YouTube on Brzezinski boasting about how he set up the Taliban in Afghanistan. You'll see him encourage them to fight the Soviets at that time in the 1970s. And he actually says, yours is a holy war. This man, who obviously believes in nothing but himself and his own peer group, is encouraging other people to go and fight a holy war, a jihad. And he uses these terms against the Soviets, knowing full well, once it was set up and it was backed by the CIA, that 10, 15 years down the road, it'd be a problem. And then they'd have to go to war with the very group that created to fight the Soviets. That's what's happening today. Long-term strategies. Well, that's how history has always been run. If you can go into the books where you find the British Home Office is mentioned, study the history of the diplomatic corps. Because the diplomats were spies. They would go into territories, set up embassies, collect intelligence data for future invasions. Their job was also to try and grab the rights of minerals, gold, silver, etc. across the planet. All natural resources. And find ways, long-term strategy, to either bribe it off the present rulers of those countries or else create an ultimate war with them and simply steal it under the guise of occupation. We're living through a stage today, as I say, where this is all coming to a culmination. This is the post-industrial era, the post-technical, almost in the West. It's all done in other countries, all the technical stuff. And Brzezinski himself talks about the technocratic era, where the future will be for an elite with a highly trained bureaucracy underneath them and scientific elite who will not need the human labor that was needed in the past. Human labor that is excessive and is unemployed and is hungry is now a threat to that established elite. So now they're doing something which they can only do to the human species. They don't need to do this with animals. With animals, you just go out and hunt them and kill them. We are the only species that has to be convinced to allow ourselves, for the good of all, to be sterilized and bring down the population through abortion on one end and euthanasia on the other, under the guise to save the planet. And unfortunately, with the massive propaganda campaigns that are all over media in every country at the same time, with all the big foundations backing them with unlimited financing. Remember, the foundations are owned by the international bankers themselves. Then they can pull all of this off, and unfortunately, it really is working. In kindergarten now, you walk into a kindergarten anywhere in Europe or the Americas, and you'll see the rainbow inside every single one of them. You'll see all the terms of the world. Here's the globe, we're all global. And you'll see the green messages everywhere, and how the sacrifice will have to be made to save the world and the planet and future generations of society. Sacrifice. You tie that together with the institutions that were comprised of the Fabian Society. He was a member of the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That's one society. The Council on Foreign Relations is also the same thing as the Royal Institute for International Affairs. They are what Thatcher and Professor Carol Quigley called the parallel government. They have told us what the future is going to be. Some of the members have written books about the need to kill off massive amounts of the population by any means possible. And so we see this final stage being pushed as they convince us that we are the problem. The Club of Rome, that also belongs to the same group, in the 1990s, the two founders said that back in the 1970s at the Club of Rome, they were given the task as a premier think tank for the globe, this global society, the task to find ways of reducing the population and controlling the people to go along with this, convincing the public how to go along with it. And they said they looked at all possible means of doing so. What had worked before? Again, geopolitics, strategy. Under warfare conditions, the public will give up freedom. The public will be directed by governments, bureaucracies, and police, military, etc. Under warfare, the public sacrifice, they'll have less food, they'll ration stuff. They go along with it to save themselves. Therefore, they have to find a warfare strategy, a reason for war. And what they came up with was that man was the enemy of the planet. They said the idea that global warming could be created and blamed upon mankind would fit the bill. These are the words they used. That would fit the bill, written in the 1970s and decided at the think tanks then, and published by the guys involved in a book called The First Global Revolution, well worth reading. When they hit upon an idea from a premier think tank, they will never change that agenda. I've said before, it wouldn't matter if we're up to our eyes in snow all year round. They will still stick to global warming. That's the agenda. Now, of course, it changes slightly to climate change, which simply means changes in the weather. And they're in the process now of convincing the general public to be afraid of summer, for instance. It's all done through the alteration and distortion of perceptions. Massive psychology is used on all of this. And they certainly understand mass psychology of the general public. These boys don't simply announce things or make up a wish list of the future and send it up the chimney to Santa Claus. When they come up with an idea, they implement it. I've followed the United Nations Department of Statistics as they announce every single year the sperm count of the Western male, which has been falling drastically since the 1950s. They say that it's down by about 75–85%. Now, when something like that's happened across the whole of Europe and the Americas in 50 years, and they suddenly started noticing it 50 years ago, sudden onset, and there's no crisis made about it. There's no comeback after announcing the statistics. They just tell you the cold hard statistics and go off to the next statistic on some other topic. That means it's part of the agenda. Otherwise, it would be a crisis. If this wasn't planned and part of the agenda, believe you me, it would be a crisis if they didn't authorize it. And now they tell us that the average American has less than 20% sperm and only about 15% is motile. That's not a coincidence. What happened in the 1950s to start out this ball rolling? In the 1950s, they suddenly put all the known female synthetic estrogens into food supply. They put it in baby food. Procter & Gamble were the first one to admit, after investigation 40 years later, that they were using a rinse to supposedly sterilize the baby bottles, and it contained bisphenol A. An odd thing to rinse baby bottles with, and bisphenol A is the very thing that attacks young male children at that age and stops the testes from developing properly. You go back even further into more detail and you find out that the cosmetic industry was using insufflatants. Insufflation is a technique where certain carriers are put into the creams themselves, and these creams then absorb into the skin, carrying other chemicals with them. They're almost like they carry the payloads into the target in the bloodstream. We find that the women were highly toxic with the artificial bisphenol A and other ingredients. And therefore, within the first 8 to 12 weeks of pregnancy with a male child, there's a very good chance that male grew up to be either almost completely sterile or to say maybe have some motile sperm. This was all understood 50 years ago. Bisphenol A, for instance, was discovered in the 1890s, and the properties it had against humans, especially males, was known then too. Now it's in all the beer cans. Great target males again. They line the cans with it. There's been many exposés on it now. The CBC in Canada, which is a government-owned television station, it's the BBC basically of Canada, did a documentary series called the Disappearing Male. And it goes through all of that in that particular talk with proof. Also, we go back to the writings of Lord Bertrand Russell and Julian Huxley and Aldous Huxley. who are also related to the Darwins, by the way, you'll find that they talked about ways to sterilize the populations in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But of course, and they even said they would use the needle.